Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. I'm Jeremy Crow, and tonight we're going to be talking about Luciferianism and the lightbearer archetype. So, um, who's all here? Cozy Kitsu, welcome. Novus Ordo Luciferi USA, Indiana, greetings. Welcome. um, Great. Anybody else here? You can say hi in the chat. Um, yeah. Okay. So tonight, the main topic, is going to be um, my understanding of Luciferianism and what I believe that means in terms of how you would live your life and the goals that an individual who would consider themselves to be a Luciferian would have and how they would go about it, etc. Okay, I see a bunch of people here. Esoteric, welcome. Raul, welcome. B. Jones, hi. Stu, Dustin, welcome all. Okay, so let's get started then. Let's just jump right into it. Oh, Necronomicon. Luciferian Chef, welcome. Okay, so let's jump into it. We got 13 people here, it looks like, already. So let's do this. So Luciferianism in general, I would say, is obviously related to Lucifer. What is Lucifer? Lucifer, the word itself, means light bearer or bringer of light. That's the literal definition of that Latin word, Lucifer. So obviously, and I've said this in a lot of different videos and live streams, etc., but light has been used since time immemorial, since probably before we even had a word for light. It's been used as a symbol of knowledge and awareness. Um, we can look at that in terms of in the darkness, a lot of things are hidden. We can't see things. When it's light, it's illuminated. We can see it. We know what it is. We become aware of our surroundings in a way that we can't when it is completely dark. So, light being a symbol of knowledge and awareness, the light bringer, or the light bearer, the light bringer, the bringer of light, would be therefore a force of enlightenment, a force of illumination. And that would be like enlightenment, essentially. The force of enlightenment, the force that fights against ignorance, fights against, it brings to light that which is hidden, essentially. And we see here William, greetings from Brazil. Welcome, William. Stu, welcome, Stu. And Stu says occult means hidden. No? Yeah, that's exactly right. So occult means hidden, and it generally refers to the hidden wisdom. And so Lucifer would be the one who is bringing forth that hidden wisdom into the light of awareness. And would fight against any kind of force or system of oppression that is intent on hiding that knowledge and keeping that secret, especially if they're doing so in a selfish way, where they are trying to keep people in the dark, metaphorically, in because that allows them to benefit. So any system of power that is based off of lies, based off of hiding knowledge, twisting knowledge, controlling the narrative in a way that is not reflective of actual reality. So Lucifer would be a force in opposition to that. Furthermore, over the years, there have been there's been folklore that has built up around this word Lucifer. And the pattern that this folklore has built up around is what I like to call the lightbearer archetype. So the lightbearer archetype is this pattern, essentially, that, or a path. It's like the path of the hero or the journey of the hero, if you're familiar with the mythologist Joseph Campbell. He spoke about this idea of the hero with 1,000 faces, where he was able to identify in the mythology of several different cultures from several different time periods where the main hero would go on this journey. And it often followed very similar patterns where essentially the hero would become an outsider to the culture that they had grown up in and gone off on a journey, conquered some sort of challenge, gained a treasure, which was often wisdom of some sort, and eventually brought it back to enrich the culture that they had originally come from, oftentimes getting rejected initially, but ultimately benefiting the culture through helping it to grow. And we see this in the Luciferian lightbearer archetype as well, although it's a very specific form of that hero's journey. So in the lightbearer archetype, the journey of the lightbearer, you often see this figure who has uncovered hidden or forbidden knowledge. Oh, hey, Bearcat. A little late, that's fine. Just jump on in at any point. You can always watch it from the beginning again later because this is going to be on the channel. So in the lightbearer archetype, you see this journey where the individual uncovers hidden or forbidden knowledge of some sort, shares it with others, and in doing so helps emancipate or free those individuals from not only ignorance, but from the systems of oppression that are utilizing that ignorance in order to benefit. So we can see an example of this in several different mythologies, and the one that's probably the most pertinent to the word Lucifer, because it has been associated with this mythological character through Christian folklore. They have said that the serpent in Eden from the Genesis story, that serpent in Eden is Lucifer. And if we examine this, let's see, is that character a light bearer, a bringer of light? Well, there's the hidden knowledge portrayed by the fruit of the tree of knowledge that Adam and Eve were forbidden to eat from. He encouraged Eve to eat from that tree of knowledge, which she did, and she shared that with Adam. And they were freed from that system of servitude, essentially. They were no longer required to be servants in that Garden of Eden. and they were now knowledgeable. And God actually got nervous and said, well, we better kick them out of Eden, because if they eat from the tree of knowledge, not only will they have all the knowledge of the gods, but they will all, or sorry, if they eat from the tree of life, not only will they have all the knowledge of the gods, which they already have, but they will also have eternal life, and they'll be no different from a god. So we better kick them out before they do that. And so they were relieved of their burden of being servants to this god, ignorant servants. But now they had to do things on their own. Now, the repercussions for the serpent was that God, in that story, removed his arms and legs because he had limbs, and he was forced to crawl on his belly, and other things. There was a couple other things there, be animosity with the woman, etc. But those are the key points. He shared this forbidden knowledge with humans and was then punished for it and had to crawl on his belly, which is a form of being earthbound in a sense, if you can think of it that way. Now, another figure from mythology that follows a very similar pattern and is probably the most pure example that I'm aware of the lightbearer archetype would be Prometheus. This is one of the most pure examples of that in mythology, where Prometheus, similarly, he sees humans being treated as servants, as animalistic cattle, essentially, to the Olympian gods, Zeus being the king of the Olympian gods. So he goes and sneaks into Mount Olympus, where those gods are residing. He steals the fire from Hephaestus's forge, brings it down the mountain, down Mount Olympus, and teaches humanity how to use that fire. So that knowledge was forbidden to humans. They weren't supposed to know that, because Zeus wanted humans to be ignorant and obedient and dependent, so that they would worship him and not feel like they can do things on their own. Dustin said, poor Snick. So Prometheus steals the fire, the forbidden knowledge, and teaches that to the humans, who then go on to do all kinds of crazy things with that fire, but that's another story. But Zeus gets really pissed off about this, and he punishes Prometheus by chaining him to a mountain. Sometimes they say a boulder, but usually in that case it's a boulder on a mountain. So we see again that earthbound kind of thing, where he tries to bind him to the earth as a punishment, and Zeus's eagle will come and eat the liver out of Prometheus, and every night it grows back, and it's a cycle of suffering that keeps repeating over and over, which is very similar to the idea of the cycle of samsara, the death and rebirth cycle that we see in Eastern religions such as Hinduism and Buddhism, where they are stuck in this cycle. We see a very similar type of pattern described in Gnosticism. Now, another mythological character that follows a very similar pattern as this, which we could also say is one of these light bearers, one of these figures that embodied the light bearer archetype, would be Enki. or which is a god from the Sumerian tradition, later renamed Ea in the Babylonian version of those same myths. But let's just use Enki as we talk about it. So, in that story, Enki and his brother Enlil, they decide that they need servants because the people that were mining resources on the earth, they weren't humans, they were other gods, the Igigi, I believe that they were called. They didn't want to do it anymore. It was hard work mining these minerals, especially gold, from the earth. And so they, in modern terms, we could say genetically engineered this race of servants that would do that work for them. So they took a primate and they mixed their own blood with that primate. In modern terms, it's been reinterpreted in modern times as a type of genetic engineering where they created a hybrid between themselves and the lower primates to create this creature that was smart enough and had enough dexterity to perform this work, but it wasn't so smart that it could rebel very easily. Hey, Nocturnal Frequency Radio. Good evening. R. Schultz, long time no see. Welcome. Glad you guys could make it. So they created this servant species, which is humans, hominids, you could say. And they were the ones that were doing all the work for the gods. They were serving the gods. They were doing the labor that they required of them. And at some point, they were complaining about how difficult the work was. They didn't like doing it, just like the Igigi before them. So they became so loud in their complaints that Enlil said, let's just get rid of them. It's too much. It's too annoying. Let's just wipe them out. But Enki, being the one that was the primary creator of this species, he saw a lot of potential in them. And in fact, they were related to them because they had used some of their own blood, some of their own DNA to create this species. And he saw a lot of potential. He didn't like the idea of just wiping them out. So secretly, he went to a few of these people and he taught them how to survive the natural disasters that weren't so natural after all, that Enlil was about to unleash upon them in an effort to wipe them out, just to be rid of them because he didn't want the burden of dealing with them and their complaints anymore. So, for example, Enlil was going to create a blight that would wipe out their food sources. So Enki taught the people how to store grain, and they were able to store the grain, and then when the blight happened, they had food stores that they were able to survive off of to get them through it. So frustrated, Enlil was like, okay, I'm going to try something else. And there was a series of a few different things. And each time, Enki would secretly teach them this forbidden knowledge that allowed them to survive the upcoming disaster. One of them being a global flood that was going to wipe them out. And it was a very similar story to what we see later in the Bible in the story of Noah, which was essentially a retelling of that story, because Moses, or whoever actually wrote the five first books of the Old Testament, um, would have been aware of these Mesopotamian myths from ancient Sumer and Babylon. Babylon in particular, he would have been aware of that because of just the history of how that religion developed, how Judaism developed. And so that story ended up getting retold into the Noah story, but details were changed. um, that's a whole other, we can get into the weeds with that. I could get onto a whole divergent discussion about how that developed and who the different characters became as they got changed into the Semitic story. But the point here is that Enki, he went against the will of his brother and the other gods in order to give humans hidden and forbidden knowledge that they weren't supposed to have, in order to allow them to overcome the genocidal attempts by Enlil and the other gods. Now, in this story, Enki didn't really get super punished, but we do see that he then goes on to live in an underground submarine, or not the device, but I mean underwater, subterranean submarine cave, an underwater cave, and he lived in that underwater cave from that point forward. So we still see this kind of embodiment, this earthly energy taking place in that. But he wasn't so much punished. He kind of chose to go live in that cave under the water. Okay, so Cody, welcome Cody, said, "I know I'm a Japanese flying G-head character, lol." Yeah, so I'm aware of a couple different stories in Japanese folklore of different yokai, where the head separates from the body in those particular entities. I guess that's what you're referring to. I'm not sure the relevance, but maybe it connects and I just didn't realize. But we see that same pattern, and that's what I refer to as the lightbearer archetype. Now, it's not just mythological characters that we see embodying this lightbearer archetype. We also see humans, actual historical figures, embodying this same lightbearer archetype in their own unique way. So let's take a classic example of Giordano Bruno. Actually, let's do one that's even more recognizable. Galileo Galilei. Galileo, as we all know, he was doing scientific experiments and thought experiments, and he was observing the night sky and the stars and the sun and all this. And at one point, he came to the conclusion that it made a lot more sense. It was a lot more of an elegant math, and it just fit a lot better if we thought of the sun as the center of our solar system and that the earth rotated around it, rather than the earth being the center of the universe with the sun going around it. If we look at all the other stars and the planets and how they move, it made so much more sense to think of it as the sun being the center of the solar system, with the the Earth and the other planets rotating around it. Now, he came out with that and he said, listen, I'm pretty confident that this is what's going on. It's not a terracentric universe. We've got a heliocentric solar system here. And that went against the established doctrines of the Roman Catholic Church, which was incredibly powerful at the time. The Roman Catholic Church, they held so much power in the time of Galileo. They said that's heresy. You can't say something that's against the established doctrines of the church, and heresy was punishable by death. And so he had the courage to go out on a limb, to put his own neck on the line, to share this knowledge with humanity because he felt that it was so important. This knowledge that was forbidden by the church, he told everybody. Now, because of that pressure that the Catholic Church imposed, they forced him to recant because he was going to face death otherwise. And so he did recant at the time because he didn't want to die, and he had already shared the knowledge anyway. So that was the genie was already out of the bottle, So he recants. Later, centuries later, the Roman Catholic Church actually apologizes for that, and he was vindicated. So much, much later, but still, eventually, he was vindicated, and the knowledge that he shared was already out there and had impacted minds. It had impacted individuals, thinking people that could see the truth in what he had said, regardless of the fact that he was forced to recant. And they understood the political and the personal implications of that. So, hey, AL. Howdy, I'm late. Welcome. Cody D says the Papal Guard on guard. Yeah. So yeah, actually, he was a light bearer. He was one of these figures, an actual real flesh and blood human who embodied that light bearer archetype in his own unique way. He had uncovered this forbidden knowledge, and he shared it with humanity at great personal risk. He eventually, he suffered quite a bit for it, actually. Now, it's not necessary in the light bearer archetype to actually experience that punishment, but the fact that they're doing so at great risk. And if we look at the folklore that is developed around the idea of Lucifer, as we see in stories such as John Milton's Paradise Lost, for example, we see this character that stands up to God himself, that he wants equality, he sees this power structure, this hierarchy, and he doesn't think that it's right. There's various different versions of the story. There's the idea that Lucifer was told to bow down to man and he refused. There's stories that Lucifer wanted equality rather than servitude, and that sense of pride, that his belief that he was equal, that he wanted equality, was the sin anyways, that he was sent down to hell, essentially, or some people say to earth. This pattern keeps being repeated over and over, we see. Now, other characters we see also doing this in more modern times, let's say Edward Snowden, he was working for the NSA, the National Security Association, I believe that is what that stands for, or no such agency. Um, I guess it was National Security Agency, something like that. But he was working for this department within the U.S. government, and he became aware that they were spying on average citizens and people who were in allied countries, heads of state even in of allies, and that they didn't have warrants to do these things. They were doing it illegally. They were spying on their own people and that sort of thing. And this, he leaked it. He leaked this knowledge, this forbidden knowledge. And, he knew that he could face severe consequences for doing so, but he felt that it was important enough for the people to know. And now that information is out there. So he also he embodied that light bearer archetype in his own unique way. Now, Galileo Galilei and Edward Snowden, they may not have considered themselves Luciferian, but they embodied the light bearer archetype in their own way, regardless. And therefore, each of those are worthy of the title Lucifer, which that literally means that the light bearer, a light bearer or bringer of light, they are Lucifers in their own unique way. Now, how does this relate to Luciferianism in general? If those of us who consider ourselves Luciferians, how does this light bearer archetype play out? Now, a lot of people automatically, because they were raised in a mainstream religion, automatically the brain starts to think, well, a light bearer or Lucifer is to be worshipped, right? And there are individuals who do worship Lucifer. But now that to me is not the key point of being a Luciferian. I don't worship, and I personally don't think that it's appropriate. And I'll tell you why. So, I believe that the goal of a Luciferian is to become a Lucifer in your own right. And if you're a Lucifer, would you worship something external? Would you be bowing down to anything outside of yourself? No. Lucifer, in any of the various different stories, would not do that. Would the serpent in Eden bow down to any external figure? No. Would Prometheus bow down to Zeus and worship Zeus? No. Would any of them bow down? No. And so I don't believe that it is appropriate for a Luciferian to worship, not even to worship Lucifer. Now, to look at Lucifer as an inspiration, as something to aspire to, yes. But that is very different than bowing down to and worshiping. Now, there's an analogy that I like to use when I'm talking about this. If you are practicing heroism, is it important whether you worship heroes or not? It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant to the practice of heroism. So to practice heroism is to exhibit the qualities of a hero, to act in heroic ways, right? Whether you worship a hero or not, it doesn't really make a difference. The most important thing is whether you are acting in a heroic fashion. and committing heroic acts, right? And this ties back to the idea of the journey of the hero and the light bearer archetype being a very specific type of hero in that sense. So, similarly, if you are a Luciferian, is it important whether or not you worship Lucifer? To me, I feel that that is irrelevant. It's a personal choice. If you think that it's appropriate for you to do, then you are free to do so. I personally don't, and I don't feel that it's appropriate, but I don't tell other people whether or not they should or not. That's a choice that they make themselves. The important part, the key part of being a Luciferian is to seek to embody that light bearer archetype in your own unique way or ways. When you uncover hidden or forbidden knowledge, you share that with those who are seeking it. You share that with those who can benefit from it and be emancipated from these systems of control that are holding them down in ignorance. The truth shall set you free, as they say. And if you can uncover hidden or forbidden truths, to share that, even if it means taking a risk to do so, you share that knowledge, especially with those who seek it, in order to help emancipate them, to free them from that ignorance, and to also free them from any system of control that is taking advantage of that ignorance. And this can be on a very small scale. It can be on a very wide scale, on a huge scale. And it doesn't matter. It matters about your own personal circumstances. If you can uncover hidden and forbidden knowledge and share that, then you become worthy of the title of light bearer or Lucifer. You become a Lucifer. So that is the key point in my mind, in my understanding of what Luciferianism means. That is the key point. To seek after, not only just if you happen to come across it. I feel like to be a Luciferian, to actively be a Luciferian, is to seek after that hidden and forbidden knowledge and to share it, especially with those who are looking for it. You know, it doesn't always, it's not that effective to try and share knowledge with people who are not receptive to it. But individuals who are seeking that knowledge, to make it available to them so that they can use that knowledge to enlighten themselves, to become aware, to free themselves of ignorance, to take themselves out of the influence of those who are taking advantage of that ignorance so they can no longer be taken advantage of. That is the work of a Luciferian. And that is how a Luciferian lives their life. And that is a key point. Whether you choose to worship Lucifer or not, that's your personal choice. As I said, I don't worship anything. I don't think that it's appropriate personally, but I do know that there are people and who do believe that, and that's their personal choice. The key point, though, however, just like the key point in practicing heroism, is to actually do the acts of heroism. To be a Luciferian is to do the acts of a light bearer. Let me take a look at a few comments here then. Most deities we are taught are evil aren't. I had to work with demons to spiritually awake. I was raised Catholic and Mormon, so it was overcoming fear for sure. I can totally relate to that. I was raised Catholic. I was raised with both Catholic and um, Ojibwe culture. And so there's a bit of cognitive dissonance there where my father taught me that I should be proud of my native heritage while at the same time he sent me off to Catholic school. Well, not off to some boarding school, but he enrolled me in Catholic school here in Canada. If you're not aware, there are two main school systems, one being the public school system and the other being the Catholic school system. Both receive money from taxpayer funds, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I grew up Catholic, and when I started delving into some of the more pagan beliefs, for example, I remember being at a bookstore one time as a young teenager and seeing this book on. It was so tame. It was such a tame book. But it was a book on neo paganism and neo pagan shamanism is what it was referred to as. And I picked up the book and I was skimming through it a little bit, and I felt that fear, because that's how they control you as well. They control you through ignorance and fear of knowledge. Even they tell you to avoid certain knowledge, just like God in the Garden of Eden, or like Zeus didn't want the people to have knowledge of how to control fire. The Catholic Church, they don't want you to be even aware of anything outside of what they teach. And so they instill this fear in you that reinforces the ignorance so that they can maintain that control over you. And so this book, which was so tame by my current standards, what I look through now, what I read now, and what I delve into and practice now, that was nothing really. That wasn't even, a blip. But at the time, in order to pick up that book, and I did end up buying that book and reading it, it was a leap of courage. It wasn't a leap of faith. It was a leap of courage for me to expose myself to that knowledge. It was like me saying, you know what, that apple does look good, and taking a bite. And so I had to have that courage in order to free myself from that prison, that mental prison of that system of control that I had been indoctrinated into. So yeah, I can totally relate to what you're saying there. Let me see, what are we seeing out here? MT says, very interesting comparison, enjoying the stream. I'm glad you enjoy it. Thanks for stopping by and leaving a comment, MT. We can't bring the light when everything is light. The light can only be brought and found when what we know is darkness. Yeah, I mean, there's different ways to describe, the same thing. Darkness isn't what we think of it as, isn't evil either. In the analogy that I was using earlier, darkness was playing the role of ignorance, but really there's different ways of looking at it, and we can use different analogies. We can even look at light as being something that hides truth from us as well, and darkness being what can reveal what we can find the light in the darkness. The sun being there kind of blots out the rest of the sky, and at night when it gets dark, we can actually see further out into the universe and such. But, for the purposes of the description of what I was talking about earlier and talking about the lightbearer archetype, light plays the role of knowledge and awareness, and darkness plays a role of ignorance. So there's different ways that we can use these analogies, and they start to break down if we get too elaborate with them. But there's different metaphors we can use to describe this. But yeah, we're all different. Each and every one of us is unique. Some are proud of it, others hide from it. Yeah. Well, yeah, there's the forces of individuality and the forces of the collectivism and conformity. And ultimately, I think it's finding a balance, because we do have to recognize the interdependence of all things. No man is an island, that sort of thing. And we are social creatures. And ultimately, if you look at that journey of the hero as spoken of by Campbell, ultimately the hero comes back to enrich the culture that it originally come from. With that brings the treasure back, right? And if that treasure is knowledge, it's sharing it with others. It's not just about keeping it for yourself, right? It's not light holder and hider, right? The light bearer shares that knowledge. It doesn't take it and hide it or use it for their own selfish purposes. The light bearer archetype brings the light bringer, brings the light to share, right? To help others escape from that ignorance and systems of control that are taking advantage of that ignorance. And Bearcat says absolutely, or sorry, Beatcat, absolutely 100%. It's forbidden and painted as bad or evil because it liberates us and frees us. Yes, just because something is forbidden doesn't mean it's bad. Oftentimes we should be questioning why something is forbidden exactly. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. We see in The Wizard of Oz. And Toto comes, right? The dog comes and pulls that curtain back and exposes the lies of that system of power represented by that wizard. It's kind of it plays out in a really weird way, but ultimately it's a kind of an interesting story because the wizard, his lies exposed, and him becoming vulnerable because of that, eventually he becomes good, right? In the original canonical version of the story. I haven't seen Wicked, so I don't know that spin on it or that other perspective. But in the original movie, I didn't read I did read the book, but it was a long time ago. I watched the movie a whole bunch of times growing up. But in the movie, ultimately, that demiurgic character of the wizard, his lies are exposed, and he kind of is like, you got me, and then he ends up deciding to be good and helping these people. But yeah, he was trying to hold on to his power while he could, by saying, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, and using that figurehead, that illusion, to say, hey, that guy back there, don't pay any attention to him. And it was him controlling the whole thing. Yeah, that is an example of that hidden knowledge, or that hidden and forbidden knowledge. Dustin says, I guess the more general question is whether there's knowledge that shouldn't be shared because it might cause harm. Well, that depends on who's using it, I suppose, right? And ultimately, if you look at the story of Prometheus, the fire that he taught to humans. Some of them used it to heat their homes. Some of them used it to cook their food, that sort of thing. But others used it to refine metals from the earth and forge weapons that they could use to harm other people. You know, he gave the knowledge, and then it was up to the humans to decide what they were going to do with it. And some of them used it to for positive things, and some of them used it to oppress other people. But ultimately, that knowledge was available to everybody. It evened the playing field in a sense, where the humans now had that knowledge where they didn't have that knowledge before, and they could choose to use it in positive ways or destructive ways. So I don't think that it's Prometheus's place to dictate how they use that knowledge. It was up to them, the free will. You know, they have free will, and they could choose to destroy themselves with it, or they could choose to lift each other up with it. And it wasn't Prometheus's place to decide. Let's see here. Ignorance and lack of willingness to understand others, I believe, are what causes the most harm. Yeah, ignorant. Yeah, exactly. So hiding the knowledge, I believe, probably causes more harm in general, if in most cases, than the truth. The truth can be uncomfortable, but it's better than being ignorant and not having a choice, right? So, like in the Matrix, right? That knowledge that of the true nature of the experience that they were having in the simulation, ultimately when they became aware of that and accepted that, then they ended up having to live in, you know, an underground cave and eat slop, right? But they were given a choice about that knowledge. You know, it's not a perfect metaphor, but what would you rather have? Would you rather live in blissful ignorance, or would you rather know the truth even if it was uncomfortable? You know, I would choose the truth even if it's uncomfortable. I want to know. I want to be able to make an informed decision about my life and how I live it and what I'm dealing with, rather than, you know, be caught up in this delusion that is controlling how I live, and other people are probably benefiting from that ignorance, right? And Lucifer says, I hope you're doing well. Yeah, I am. Thank you. Peter gives the horns. Beat Cat said, I'd want the truth. Exactly. And now this is the thing. This is why I emphasize making the knowledge available to those who seek it. You know, as a Luciferian, you're not trying to convert people. You're not trying to go out there and try and convince people. You are trying to make information available to people who are looking for it. Ultimately, that's how I've kind of determined. For one thing, people aren't going to be receptive to the truth if they're not looking for it anyway. But to make it available to those who are looking for it, that's important. Because if you're looking for the truth and you can't get access to it, well, then you're going to live in ignorance, and you don't have a choice about how you live, because you don't have the information, you don't have the power to make proper informed decisions, right? But if you're not looking for the truth, then you're just going to live how, you know, you're going to live. So that ultimately is what I believe Luciferianism is. Now we have occultism, as was mentioned earlier. Occultism is hidden knowledge, they say, right? That's what the word itself means. Occult means hidden. So often, not always, not every Luciferian practices occultism, but it is a set of information, it's knowledge that has been hidden or forbidden or taboo that we can study, that we can learn about, that we can practice, that allows us to understand our place in the universe, our situation, the reality that we're being presented with, and gives us tools in order to uncover hidden knowledge about ourselves, even about the world around us. And it gives you an edge in whatever you're trying to achieve. And those hidden techniques, those secret techniques that we can uncover, become useful to us. We can recognize the usefulness of these methods. Now, some people are just philosophical Luciferians and practice the lifestyle of uncovering the truth, not being ignorant if they can help it, and that sort of thing. Not every Luciferian practices occultism, but that is often part of it. That there are these tools that we can access if we have the courage to study and experiment and put them into practice and see if they work for us, that are, generally referred to as occult. These include lucid dreaming, astral projection, divination, all these different forms of practice, shadow work, shamanic soul retrieval, alchemy. These are practices that that individuals can utilize in order to achieve self-knowledge and to become more whole, to heal themselves, and therefore become an even more effective light bearer in the world. I've developed a set of occult practices, a complete occult system, which I refer to as Luciferian Alchemy, which you can learn if you join the Novus Ordo Luciferi. I've been teaching that to members for just over a year. And I've developed this over the course of about 30 years of practice and experience in the occult arts and sciences. So if you're interested in that, in the description of this video, there's a link to the Patreon that'll allow you to join the order and get access to courses, documents, a calendar with dates on it for a ritual calendar for the new Luciferian era, which we are in year 12 of now. So if you're interested in that and you want to delve even further into it, check out that link to the Patreon. There's also a website, a public website, that has some information on there as well. Novus Ordo Luciferi.org. If you go to the Patreon, actually, you can become a free follower of it. If you're not sure, follow that account, and by becoming a follower of that page without having to pay anything at all, some of the posts will be unlocked. And so you'll have access to some of the articles that I put out there just for free followers of the page as well. And that'll give you even more of an idea of what kind of things are being taught there. And, if you want to delve further into it, then you become a paid member at just $5 a month, and that unlocks all of the documents. It also unlocks, I think, must be around 40 hours worth of recorded courses on various different occult topics that and ongoing new courses and lessons and workshops are being taught all the time, and they're recorded and then added to the growing archive of knowledge that you can access if you're a member. If you want to delve into that specific type of work with Luciferian alchemy. One of the people here, one of the comments, it's like what Thor said, paraphrasing, what you call magic, we call science. Once people didn't understand diseases because the viruses couldn't be seen, right? There was a famous quote, I'm trying to remember the name of who said it. Was it Asimov? There was a quote that any sufficiently advanced technology will appear as magic to the more primitive individual or culture. And I think that's what you're referring to as well. Basically, Thor basically paraphrased that in a sense too. Yeah. Arthur C. Clarke. Thanks, Dustin. Yeah, Arthur C. Clarke said that. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic to the those who don't have access to that advanced knowledge. Right. So yeah. Also, I wanted to thank everybody. I recently reached 7,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel, and that was a goal I had set for myself, that I wanted to try and reach 7,000 subscribers on the channel by my birthday this year, and I actually just missed it. I hit that 7,000 milestone exactly 1 week after my birthday. So close, and I'm so happy that that all of you who had subscribed to my channel had helped me reach that goal, and so close to where I had set it. I feel it's a victory, regardless of it being a week late. Thank you. Also, I've got monetization back on my channel. So I've had this channel for about 14 years. Some of you have been around since the beginning. Some of you are more recently found my channel, but I was never very consistent with uploading videos here and sharing information. I would just, when I felt inspired to, or if I had time, I would upload something. But at one point I did have my channel monetized because I was very active, but then I think I took like 3 years almost off, where I maybe posted like 2 videos during like 3 years, and I ended up losing my monetization on the channel. But recently, only just even a few days ago, I actually regained monetization on my channel, so I can accept super chats now. So if you wanted to support the channel, you can actually use the super chat function, which is essentially adding a tip to a comment during the live stream, or even on a regular video. I believe you can also add a tip or a contribution to a comment, even on just a regular upload. But most people do it on live streams. So yeah, that's an option that now is available on my videos as well. And you can see down there in the live chat, there's a box with like a $sign that you can click on to add a contribution to a it attaches it to a comment. So if you make a comment and you add money to it, I'll see it, and I'll mention it although I try and get to all the comments anyways. If there's a lot of comments going on, I may not notice them all, but if you added a contribution, it would make it a lot more easy to see. That's generally how that's used in live streams. If you want to support a channel, you can do that now on my channel here. But one of the big things about having monetization is that in the algorithm, in YouTube's algorithm, they'll actually start promoting my videos more because they can make more money off of my videos and live streams. So it gives my content a boost just by being monetized, whether anybody uses any of those features or not. So that was the main reason, because it amplifies the signal. It amplifies the message that I'm trying to get out. It allows more people to find this knowledge if they are seeking it. And so that was the thing that I was really hopeful for when I was trying to get my monetization back. And it does help if people do leave a super chat. It does help. Beatcat said it doesn't seem to be working on your phone, but that's don't worry about it. I'm not worried about it. Like I said, the main reason that I was happy about getting my monetization back on the channel is because YouTube boosts channels that are monetized, because then they can make more money off of it, and it amplifies the signal. It makes it easier for my videos to get found by people who are looking for that type of information. So that was really what I wanted to talk about today, is what it means to me to be a Luciferian, and the connection to the lightbearer archetype, and that as a Luciferian, I actively seek knowledge, especially that which is hidden and forbidden, and I aim to share that with those and make it available to those who are looking for it, and that in that way, thereby becoming a Lucifer in my own right. Oh, NOL Indiana channel contributed $20. Thank you very much for my first super chat since I've been remonetized again. Thanks so much. Rage quit. The little emoji there. It's pretty funny. Looks like a video game controller or something. Amber says, hey, how's it going? A bit confused, sorry, but if Lucifer is the light bearer and gives enlightenment, how is that bad? It's not bad. It's not bad. Why does Lucifer get bad rap if that's the case? Brings to mind light workers related. Oh, wow. Thanks again for an additional $20. Thank you so much, NOL in Indiana. Thank you again. You are amazing. Thanks. You are amazing. But back to Amber here. That's a great question. Now, why does Lucifer get a bad rap if that's the case? Well, take a look at who is saying that it's bad. You know, the church, they don't want you to know things that they don't agree with. They don't want you to access information that disagrees with their established doctrine. They don't want you to have a choice. They don't want you to consider alternative ideas, because if you consider alternative thought, maybe you'll realize that what they're saying is a load of bull, and maybe you'll be able to break out of that indoctrination if you can access that other information. It's a classic cult tactic that they will control your access to information, because they know if you have access to information that you are going to be able to make an informed choice. And they don't want you to make an informed choice because they benefit from your ignorance. That's why, oh, Lucifer bad, knowledge bad, do not look outside, don't look at the man behind the curtain. You know, who's saying that Lucifer is bad? Take a look at who's saying that and why. And you'll have your answer. Dustin says the church says lean not on your own understanding. Doesn't sound very enlightening. No, it does not. You see, they have a vested interest in keeping you ignorant. That's why Lucifer is got that bad rap, because he, well, I mean, I say he, but there is a lot of evidence, you could say, that Lucifer is feminine. Actually, I think it's both. I think it's neither. But if you look at the connection that Lucifer, the word Lucifer, has to the planet Venus, the original use of the word Lucifer, which means literally bringer of light, was the Romans, that's why it's Latin. The Romans used that word Lucifer to refer to the planet Venus when it was the last celestial object in the sky other than the moon before the sun rose. So it was like the last star. I mean, I know it's not a star, but if you look up in the sky, you know, and you don't realize, you'd think it was a star. The last star-like object in the night sky that kind of held out before the sun rose. If you looked up and you saw that one bright light in the sky, you knew that the sun was about to rise, because all the other stars had become obscured from view except for Venus. And Venus, we know, is a goddess in the Roman mythology, and therefore Lucifer, being connected with, or being one of the titles of that planet, is also connected with that feminine goddess energy. So in Christian folklore, you have Lucifer as male, but they did that to a lot of powerful female figures. They demonized them and turned them male. You have Astarte, the goddess Astarte, in Christian-based occult or esoteric thought. They renamed Astarte to Astaroth, the demon, the male demon. So you see this kind of taking powerful female goddesses and turning them into male demons as their way of, you know, disempowering that female archetype, because they were, you know, it's a deeply misogynistic philosophy, Christianity in general. Now, the Gnostic version of Christianity is much different than mainstream Christianity, so keep that in mind as well. Beatcat said, I was told yesterday I was going to hell because of my Gnostic views. Well, you me in good company anyways. Amber said, thank you for your response. Yeah, no problem. You say you have another question? Go ahead, and I'll try and address that. I do have to get off. I only have about maybe half an hour before I need to sign off here. But if there are a few more questions here, then I'll address those. Otherwise, I'll sign off soon. Amber says, do you think God and Lucifer are one in the same? When a person heals themselves from life trauma, they bring light and dark together. God is within, the devil is as well. So are they one? OMG. Oh my God. No, I don't think so because, well, it depends on how you define these terms. So if you are looking at it, and it sounds like you're looking at it from a perspective defined by Christianity. So the Christian way of looking at these things. Um, I noticed this comment. I thought it was cool. E writes, he believes in beauty. He's Venus as a boy. It's a line out of a Bjork song. I like that song. Yeah, that's kind of it definitely, I think of that. I think of Lucifer sometimes when I hear that song too, because you know, most people, the first thing they think of when they hear Lucifer is a male type character, but it's connected with Venus, and so it's kind of like Venus as a boy in that Bjork song. Yeah. So, Amber, when you're talking about God and Lucifer, I believe that you are doing so from a Christian defined worldview, which isn't the only game in town. You know, there are lots of different paradigms out there that are even older. For example, in Hinduism, you have this idea of Brahman, and that the world, the universe, is a dream in the mind of Brahman, and that God, um, and and Lucifer. There are characters the um, within that paradigm that could be considered light bearers as well. Buddha, for example, in Buddhism, which is sort of a spin-off of Hinduism, Buddha would be considered one of these light bearer archetypes because he was an individual that went against the grain. He was a prince, right? Prince Siddhartha, and he gave that up in order to seek after truth. And when he found it, he shared it with others in order to free them from ignorance and the suffering that comes through ignorance. So the Christian perspective and worldview, that's not the only game in town. But um, yeah, you say, yeah, Christian view, but looking outside the box past 5 years. Okay. So let's just work within that paradigm, that way of describing the world that is taught by mainstream Christianity. Well, there's a competing interpretation of that called Gnosticism. And in Gnosticism, the God that you see, um, who is in the Garden of Eden, that is telling humans not to eat from the tree of knowledge, that is a different figure from the liberator, the serpent, who gives who shares that knowledge with humans, that forbidden knowledge. It's a different character, and they overcome the system of control that was instituted by that god. So that god is often referred to as the demiurge, which means half maker. And it's kind of an allusion to the idea that this is a flawed character, that this God is not who he claims to be, that he is not this all knowing, all powerful being that he believes himself to be, that he's deluded and believes himself to be perfect and to be the creator, and that nothing is greater than him, and that all should bow down to him and worship him, and all these things, right? Whereas you have these characters such as the serpent in Eden who challenge that and say, no, we can have equal knowledge, we can have equal power, we can choose for ourselves rather than being ignorant slaves to you, the God. Yeah, so no, it's not the same character. That when we heal ourselves, the light and the dark, bringing the light and the dark together, God is within, the devil is as well, so are they one. Now, within the self, you ultimately, now, from one perspective, it is different parts of the same system ultimately. And now let me share. We do have a little bit more time before I got to wrap things up. But let me share with you my perspective, my Gnostic take on that whole thing. So in my Gnostic Luciferian perspective on that whole mythos, you have everything that we experience is a type of a dream. It is a simulation, one could say. I like to say dream. And you have this character that we call the demiurge, which is the god of the Old Testament. It's also Enlil, the brother of Enki. Enlil, I'll remind you, was the one that wanted to wipe out humanity. And Enki was the one who saw potential in humanity and tried to save it by giving them forbidden knowledge. You have this character that in Gnosticism we call the demiurge, which is the god, especially seen as described in the Old Testament, who believes itself to be the creator of everything. But actually, it's just another character within this grand dream. And it got a glimpse at one point of the fact that it wasn't the creator of everything, that it was just another dream character within this grand dream. And if you're a character within the dream, then you are not the dreamer. You are a product of the dream. A product of a dream cannot be the creator of the dream. So just like when you go to sleep and you have a dream just arises spontaneously within your mind, and you didn't consciously craft that dream. Similarly, the grand dream arose within the substrate of mind, and each character within it is a product of that dream. It is not the creator of that dream. In a sense, it's a projection of an aspect of that mind. Now, the demiurge, in his delusion, believes himself to be the creator of the dream and is afraid because it got a glimpse and didn't like it, that it wasn't that. And so in order to preserve his ego, he created these systems of control in order to exert control and kind of prove that he's the creator, and set up these rules, set up these systems, convinced people to follow and fall in line and to worship him. Whereas if we were to become aware of the truth, we would realize that we are equally a projection of an aspect of this great mind, that we are all part of this same mind, and therefore it collapses the hierarchy. It flattens it, and we realize that we are just as powerful as the demiurge, because we are an aspect, a projection of that great mind, just as the demiurge is, and that not one dream character or another dream character is the dreamer. The dreamer is the substrate mind upon which the dream arises. And that's why in Gnosticism, that God character is seen as a flawed character, is seen as deluded, is referred to as the blind one or the foolish one. And I believe that ultimately that the demiurge can be redeemed, but it'd take a lot of work. And that for each one of us who recognizes the truth, for each one of us who becomes lucid within that grand dream, it wears away. It erodes that power structure upon which the demiurge is propping up his ego. And at some point, when Toto pulls that curtain back enough, and everybody says, "Hey, you're not some all-powerful Oz. You're just another man. You're just another human. You're just another person just like we are." Then at that point, it's possible for that demiurge to recognize it, to become healed in that sense. So ultimately, in a sense, you are right, but it's a whole process that has to go through before you can get there. Let's see here. Anonymous Boss, welcome. Anonymous Boss said, I had a dream today and I actually heard someone say the word Lucifer. Very interesting, because I'm working with an Exu at the moment in the astral realm. Do you think it's a coincidence? Nope. I don't buy into that whole coincidence thing. If you find it meaningful, then it's not a coincidence. It's a meaningful message from. Ultimately, I believe everything is a message. But if you take it too literally, it can cause some problems. It's good to take things seriously, but not literally. It's symbolic, if we take things too literally, we can end up in delusion, and it can cause all kinds of problems like paranoia and these sorts of things. But ultimately, I believe that ultimately everything is a message. I think that when we live in this world, we can interpret it as a dream, because it is a dream. It's a level of dream. There's different, the way that the grand dream works is more stiff than the personal and individual dreams that we each have when we go to sleep at night. But both of them are different types of dreams. One is just more crystallized, or it has more consistency, I suppose you could say. But both are types of dreams, and both can be interpreted symbolically. And I definitely believe in that. And I think it's really cool that you had a dream today where you heard the word Lucifer, and then you stumbled across this live stream talking about Lucifer and going in depth about what the word Lucifer means and what Luciferianism is. He says, thanks to all who joined the live. So refreshing to finally chat with others about this. Yeah, thanks. I agree. Thank you to everybody who came and participated in this. I really appreciate everybody who came to the live and to show up and to participate in the chat, especially all those who are here watching, and anybody who's watching this after the fact as an archive who wasn't able to make it to the live. I appreciate, especially if you've made it this far. I really appreciate you taking the time to consider this material, and this is why I do it. I do it for you. And I hope that what I'm sharing has been at least entertaining, but hopefully enlightening in some way. Esoteric says, as always, thanks for your time and work. Thank you, Esoteric, for your time as well. Anonymous Boss said, I very much appreciate your videos. Thank you for saying that. And asked if I've worked with daemons before. Yeah, I have. Especially on the astral. I have interacted with what I would describe as demonic entities. I don't, I got to wrap this up soon. That might be a topic for another video. And I've done, especially in terms of doing shadow work, where I've uncovered damaged parts of myself, my own inner demons, you could say, and uncovered parts of myself that I had been suppressing because of traumas, and was able to recognize that and work through it and heal it and integrate those parts of myself. But yeah, and working with entities, especially, that's the most important work that I've done with what I would describe as demonic entities. Just dropping my donut in the coffee. Good morning, Lucifer, Cody D says. Anu Biru B2B says, I'm thinking more and more becoming Luciferian. I feel connected to him and always have. Yeah, it's a very powerful archetype. It's a tale as old as time, and I definitely connect with that. And when I realized that I was a Luciferian, that word Lucifer just burned into my consciousness with such intensity that I realized that was what I had been looking for years, and finally was able to recognize and accept that within myself, and I've considered myself to be a Luciferian ever since, and that was probably at least 25 years ago, something like that. Yeah, it was in my 20s, and I had been studying esotericism and occultism for at least 5 years before actively coming to the realization that I was a Luciferian and that I connected with that lightbearer archetype. Let's see here. Esoteric says, now I want a donut and coffee. Yeah, I haven't had a donut in so long, but I love donuts. I wouldn't mind one. Trying to eat healthy and such. Cody mentioned about getting static electricity off of a tree. I'm not sure. I don't know anything about that. Oh, I see. Thanks for explaining what your nickname is there. Jafar524 says hello. Hello. Welcome to the chat. I'm just about to sign off actually, but you can, once this ends, YouTube processes it, and then you can watch the whole thing from the beginning again at your leisure. And yeah, so ultimately being a Luciferian is to actively seek knowledge and to share that knowledge with those who are looking for it, thereby becoming a light bearer or a Lucifer in your own right, in your own unique way that is dependent upon the circumstances of your life and the knowledge that you have access to and that you've been able to uncover and share with those who you're able to reach with that message. So thereby becoming a Lucifer. So as a Luciferian, you seek to become Lucifer. the idea is not to worship Lucifer, it's to become Lucifer. And I think on that note, I'll sign off here. Again, thank you so much to everybody who came. I appreciate NOL Indiana with leaving the 2 super chats. I really appreciate the support. And if you want to watch more of these, subscribe to the channel. Hit the like here, which will tell the algorithm that you like this type of video, and it'll bring you more of my videos as well as similar ones from other channels. And if you are really interested in getting deeper into practicing Luciferianism, healing yourself to become a more effective light bearer in the world, and through the practice of Luciferian alchemy, check the link in the description for the Novus Ordo Luciferi, where you can join me and a community of others who are doing this together and working together to practice this occult secret knowledge that we have been practicing to, like I said, to heal ourselves and become more whole, and to be able to share knowledge with others more effectively as well. So click that link, and if you're ready to do some real work on that. And yeah, again, thanks again to everybody who showed up, and until next time,